All right, committee, we're going to go ahead and get started. We apologize for the delay. We would love to be finished tonight, but if it's not possible to be finished tonight, then we'll see you all bright and early tomorrow. But let's go ahead and get started. We have presented an offer to the Senate. And in quick review, the Senate, there's been acceptance of Senate Bill 32. There's been an acceptance of House Bill 2016 or Senate Bill 93, and there's been an acceptance of Senate Bill 63 with an offer to the Senate for Senate Bill 51, the foster care report card, and an offer for the tax credit eligibility to be maintained at, well, actually from Senate Bill 175 for free and reduced lunch, and it would go through K-12. So let's start there, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. The Senate would like to counter with regard to House Bill 2068, the tax credit eligibility, and we are countering that we stay with the K through 8. Maintain the position of free and reduced, but move to the K through 8.
Madam Chair, would you repeat that one more time?
Yes, for House Bill 2068, the tax credit eligibility, we're glad with the maintain the free and reduce, but we are staying with our position of K through 8.
All right, thank you. Do you have any other items you'd like to offer before we discuss it?
Yes, I do. With regard to the item remaining, which is actually down at the bottom, the $100 million, we are going to, Senate is changing its position, and we will just offer the governor's recommendation on K through 12 funding for fiscal year 2021, which includes those supplemental appropriations that were found there in Senate Bill 175. That would also include funding for fiscal year 2022 and 2023.
All right, and then on the matter of remote, language was emailed out. Do you have, does the Senate have a position on the in-person remote?
Yes, Madam Chair. We do accept the 3 items with regard to remote learning. There was a point of clarification with regard to that student that would be homebound, and just for clarification, it is up to the individual district on dealing if it exceeds the 40 hours on an individual basis. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. Thank you. Then we do accept the remote and in-person recommendations that you offered us.
All right, thank you. And for those of you that I made copies, I made errors and I did not put that item on there, so you'll need to add that. Okay, are there any other responses for the House?
I think the one additional response was only with regard to Senate Bill 173. And we would like to keep characteristics of dyslexia because we do, again, hold that position that not all students have been identified yet. We do agree to making the correction on page 3, line 19, where it's repay rather than replay. We do accept your offer of striking if the offer of striking may include, but we do want it to read, if applicable, shall include. So that is, we would like it to read, if applicable, shall include. Thank you.
Okay, great. Committee, I am going to request, do you think 5 minutes work? I'm going to request 5 minutes for the House to talk about this, and we will resume back. I don't have my phone. Does anybody have that time? What? 6:40. We'll resume back at 6:40. All right, thank you. All right, committee, we're going to go ahead and resume our discussion and our negotiations. When we last exited, we had an offer from the Senate. We want to respond back to that offer. And my vice chair and ranking will make sure I don't forget anything, as this is just moving quite a bit. So in response to the House Bill 26-8, The tax credit eligibility, we will accept your offer. That does include free and reduced lunch, and it does extend from K through 8. Just reiterating that once you are in the program, you maintain in the program unless you exit the program. So you are, for all practical purposes, grandfathered into the program. Okay, so just for clarification on that. For remote, looks like we're good on that item. For Senate Bill 173, we accept your language recommendations for Senate Bill 173. We do provide an option for for you to consider, and that is to add, and it can be adjusted with our revisor to add item C, page 4, under D1, which you have language, which would say that there shall be priority for educational resources that improve student English language arts and math outcomes. So if you would take a minute, you can review that when you exit, and the revisor can adjust, have that more of as a conceptual option for you. We also would accept moving the sunset that would be included from originally, it was fiscal year 2023. And so we accept your offer to move the sunset to fiscal year 2024 for high density at-risk weighting. The next item we'd like to offer would be that on the ACT items, Senate Bill 63, we do have an adjustment to Senate Bill 63 on ACT. We would like to remove unaccredited. So therefore, the ACT option would only be for accredited schools, not unaccredited. So that would be one thing we would like to offer. We would also like to go back to Senate Bill 175, and there were items on there that amounted to approximately $10 million, and they were the following. These were items that we would direct the Department of Education to use the appropriate coronavirus monies. And so the language would be identical to what was in the CCR for Senate Bill 175. And that would be to add $10 million, and that breaks down to $5 million for the Safety in Schools grants, 3.9 for the mental health pilot program, and $100,000 for community in schools. Remember, this is not SGF. In addition to that, we want the language that includes the recommendation for added compensation of $500 per teacher. And that was not considered a bonus, but was a recommendation to our schools. Did I forget any items from our discussion? Okay, are there any other items? Chairman?
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I've been asked to make sure to clarify on Senate Bill 32 that we often refer to it as concurrent. It is the dual enrollment, so just so that we are clear, it is the dual enrollment. The only other thing is I want to make sure, I know that the revisor had asked that we make sure that it is clear that we did accept your offer on Senate Bill 51, the foster care report card, as it was completed. So that's all for right now. I think if we have 5 minutes, we can be back.
All right, so 5 minutes, if we could meet back at approximately 6:51. Thank you. All right, we are back at it here on our House Bill 2134, and I would like to turn it over to Chair Brombacher.
Thank you very much. The Senate Conference Committee accepts the language, striking the language of unaccredited on Senate Bill 63 with regard to the ACT, and that would be true for the ACT, the pre-ACT, and the work keys. With regard to language to be added to what is already in existence of Senate Bill 173, there shall be a priority for educational resources that improve student English language arts and math outcomes. We are not accepting that. We believe that that requirement for the reporting of that longitudinal data with regard to state assessment and other assessments for the children that have been identified as at risk, they will have to report that data with regard to the English language arts as well as the math outcomes, and we feel that that does already set that priority. That's what we are going to be looking at when they come back, so we just respectfully decline that language. We think that school districts are starting to hear loud and clear how we want those at-risk and high-density at-risk funds to be used on special programming for these students that's above and beyond what they receive normally in the classroom. And that reporting is going to hold them accountable. Thank you, Madam Chair. I would say that with regard to your offer for the $10 million for the Kansas Department of Ed to disperse with COVID monies for the safety in schools, the mental health pilot, as well as our communities in schools, we did not come to a conclusion for that, so we would need probably another 5 minutes. And we did have a question with regard to the recommendation also of the $500 per teacher. One, did that include paras? And two, did you have a fiscal note on that? I thought I heard 18 million, but I wasn't certain.
Yes, Madam Chair. So it does not include paras, and I think if there are 32,000, how many? I think 30,000 teachers. Does that sound about right? So then, yeah, I think it's about $18 million.
Thank you very much. So if you would give us 5 more minutes, I think we could come back with response.
Okay, committee, then we will come back at 7:05. All right, committee, we're going to go ahead and continue on. I'm going to turn it over to Senator Chairwoman Barngarter. Go ahead.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. We will counter your offer. We did have extensive discussion. Our concern with regard to the 3.9 million for the mental health pilot and the 100,000 for the communities in schools is after this one-time expenditure, it kind of creates that cliff for the next year. We do see that safety in schools, so if the 5 million for that, if that's going to be used to put in the cameras or other aspects, we see that is appropriate in the context that it would have continued utilization and doesn't create a cliff. So our counter is that $5 million be expended by Kansas Department of Education from their COVID funds for that safety in schools. We appreciate the recommendation of the $500 per teacher. We are concerned, one, about the $15 million price tag. We're also concerned not so much by the price tag, but the school districts that choose not to. And we know some school districts will and some won't. We do feel that our teachers, our educational force in the state of Kansas have worked hard under some very trying conditions. But at this point, we know, I know of a few school districts that have already given some stipends to teachers, but we don't feel comfortable with that recommendation. We do also have a counter, though, and that would be, this actually came out of Senate Education with regard to when we were working on the education budget. And it is because we do continue to have a concern. We know that the Kansas Department of Education had come up with a recommendation, and I believe it is that the State Board of Education did approve I'm looking for it. I believe it was 400 mil, where is it? There we are. 400,000 for dyslexia and early literacy support. That is kind of unclear as to how they intend to use that. So we would like to make a recommendation, and that is that $80,000 come from the Kansas Department of Education, their COVID money, so it would be one-time use, for a one-year grant to the Center for Reading for a project manager or manager, so it could be part-time. And they would work to assist in the development, and I do have language that I can send to you, but assist in the development and support of a science of reading curricula for KBOR universities and colleges based on the knowledge and practice standards that have been adopted by the Kansas Department of Ed. They would develop and support a recommended dyslexia textbook list for in-class learning for school districts to use. They would develop and support a recommended dyslexia resources list for in-class learning for school districts to use. They would provide knowledge and support for train the trainer and in-service and professional development curriculum for school districts to use. And they would provide knowledge and support for developing a list of qualified trainers for school districts to hire. Because here's the rub. Our Kansas Department of Education has yet to find a means of hiring a dyslexia coordinator. Our universities, all of our universities, public and private, that we have in the state of Kansas that offer education degrees, elementary ed degrees, they have not adopted yet that training for the science of reading curricula for their students. So every student that graduates right now in the state of Kansas, so those kids that are going to get their diploma in the next week or so, they have not been trained because that curricula has not been developed as far as the knowledge and practice standards with regard to that elementary education for reading. And so we need to help jumpstart that, and this project manager position in our Center for Reading could certainly do that. So that's our counter. of $80,000.
All right, thank you, Madam Chair. Committee, I'd like to, 5 minutes. We will consider your offer, and that would mean that we're back at 7:17 approximately. All right, thank you. Committee, we are fast, so we want to hit some of these items. Thank you for your offer. We appreciate the offer. On the items, the safe and secure, we're glad that that's a priority and then that was maintained. I would reiterate that we did have an agreed upon total that was approximately 10 million that was in our conference committee report, which was Senate Bill 175, that did pass the House and almost passed the Senate with a 2020. And that did include the 3.9 for mental health pilot project. Considering what has happened with COVID and the huge impact it has had on children and on teachers, on families, and on communities. This one fits right in line with the coronavirus money. And so we believe it's vital, it's important. It was included in the governor's budget. The total wasn't included in the governor's budget. Many schools that went through the pandemic didn't apply for the mental health pilot program because of the pandemic, so they weren't able to get the requests made, and so that's why the total wasn't actually expended. I think had it been expended, I think the governor likely would have included it in the initial budget. So this is the difference in that amount. So we do respectfully request that that be reconsidered. The $100,000 for the community, the community in schools is a program that works really, really well in some communities, that the ones that are there, and they also are really able to reach out to kids that are missing, that haven't shown up, that have relational problems at home, talking to individuals that work for community and schools, comparing what they once received in state funding compared to what they do now. There is a drastic difference. And in terms of the one-time funding, I think that's an excellent point, and I do concur on that. This is not about continuous funding. When we had conversations with community and schools, and in our committee, we regularly said, these items need to be funded from individual district budgets. So I agree there. And I would say that that's true for everything. That includes the mental health pilot eventually. It also includes dyslexia. So many things get pushed to the Kansas Department of Education rather than have the individual district take ownership for it. So I do think we need to be very strategic about what we are funding as a state and let our local boards make that decision. So our counter offer back is that you reconsider the 3.9 for mental health to make that whole, because we think there's a desperate need for it. And then the long-term plan would be to shift that or shift greater responsibility to the districts, so a greater percentage. And then we would also like to maintain the $100,000 for community and schools, because it is a very small fraction of what costs to operate their budget. And we also would like to maintain the recommendation for $500 we realized some districts they did not receive much COVID money because they were not Title I dependent schools. And so there's a very big difference between some of the districts. I think Wichita received around $250 million versus, some of our Johnson County school districts might have received $5 million. Now, that's a big difference. And so we understand that, but we would like to maintain it since it is through the federal dollars that the recommendation would be made. And I would like to ask you guys, it's not very professional. I would like to ask that you all consider that, and then we'd like to have our next step be the dyslexia upon your reconsideration. Thank you.
We'll be back in 5 minutes.
All right, 5 minutes, committee. All right, committee, the Senate has returned, so we will resume. Chairwoman, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. We did discuss it some more. We feel that perhaps the broadest implementation or broadest use would be the 3.9 for mental health compared to the others. So we do counter with, we will accept the 3.9 million on with regard to the mental health pilot. We do have a concern, again, with the communities and schools. We see that's it's not as broad reaching. And with regard to the $500 per teacher, I guess this gets us into the position to say that we don't want $500 to go to each teacher. That is not our position. We'd love $500 to go to every teacher. We'd probably love $1,000, if not more, to go to every teacher. But what we do know is school districts are already starting to ramp up what they will be doing for the summer. They are already starting to offer incentives for teachers to do remediation effort. And again, it would be one thing if we were going to simply budget every teacher is going to get $500, but we know that that's not a reality. And I guess I do look back at some of the board meetings that I've attended of our local school boards and those that I've watched online. And they continue to kind of take that position of, why do we have to make that decision? Or this is too difficult of a decision for us to make. And I think about my State Board of Education member, and I think that what's important now is that we make sure that our local school boards and that our State Board of Education members understand that as legislators, what we hear from our teachers whenever they come and testify, be it Zoom or in person, they say to legislators, could you do something about our pay? We don't have enough teachers. We don't have enough counselors. We don't have enough social workers. We don't have enough school psychologists because the pay is so bad. And we have to remind them that not just this year, but the year before and the year before that, school districts received more funding than ever in the history of this state. This year, the funding they have received from the state general fund, from the taxpayers, as well as other funds, and then all of the federal money coming in, school districts have received more funding than ever. And unfortunately, we have to remind them in our hearings that the legislature doesn't determine the pay for teachers and employees. That is up to local school boards. In fact, I did share when I went and spoke to one of my local school boards when they said, why haven't you done this as legislature? Why haven't you demanded, and the question was, why haven't you taken action to open all schools? And it happened to be Gardner-Edgerton School District that was still closed at the time. And I said, you know what? Legislators are ready to open schools. We're ready to make those decisions. But as soon as we start making those decisions, we'll be making a whole lot more. And we would probably start with what's hourly pay for our paras and our lunch ladies and our bus drivers, because we know they are the line of first defense to identify that kid that's depressed, to identify that child that is not receiving enough food on a regular basis, and that is dealing with problems in their life. So I think if the legislators were to start on funding, we'd start with those hourly employees, then we'd work up to teachers, and then we would work up to administrators. Administrators would be last, but what we know to be true in many of our school districts, that's not how pay increases occur. So while we, the three members of the Senate team that's here negotiating, we would love to give 500 or more to our teachers. We know that by saying that, it doesn't mean that the Department of Education is going to make those funds available to school districts. Likewise, it doesn't mean that our school districts would make that decision. So I would love to be in the position to say, yes, that will happen, but I don't think it will with that recommendation. And that is something that I am proud to say was a consensus of the Republicans and as well as the Democrats that serve today. So again, we will circle back, and we do say yes to the 3.9 for the mental health pilot. We appreciate that that is expanding. We do recognize the issues and the needs of mental health services for our, not only our students, but our families and our employees. But that is the limit of our counteroffer.
What time do we have, Norma? 7:35. Well, my counterpart is not here, and so my Regi member and I will talk to Representative Hoffman, and it may take approximately 10 minutes or so. All right, thank you, bye. Okay, committee, we're going to go ahead and get started. In response to the offer that was made by the Senate, thank you very much. We're going to go over those items here. We'd like to respond that on the $500 recommendation that we agree that they should be employed for the full year, the school year of 2020 and 2021. I think that was the original intent, and I failed to actually share that information with you on that. So I agree that it should not be just somebody that was recently hired for 1 month and of course, it is a recommendation only. We'd also like to maintain the community and schools. Currently, through the Department of Education, they only receive $50,000 in funding. And it is a recommendation or a directive to the Department of Education to use coronavirus monies for that. And so if that's not available, then that would not be funded, if I understand that correct. Is that correct? That is correct. So it would have to qualify for the coronavirus money in order for that to be funded. And I also agree with everything that you stated, that we're not looking at creating long-term funding streams for items. And I'd like, there's another item here that I'd like to bring up. This is an important one, and I'm going to have it, and I have the language, so I'm going to read it, and then I can forward it to everyone. But this relates to the remote schools and the language that we presented and that was accepted by the Senate. We just need a little bit of tweaking to the language, and this is agreed upon language from the governor's office as well as and we're presenting it to you now so you can take a look at it. On page 1 of remote learning language, new section 1B, the change language to, quote, on an individual student basis for any student who cannot reasonably attend in school in person due to illness, medical condition, injury, or any other extraordinary circumstances that would necessitate remote learning to allow the student to continue to receive an education during the existence of such circumstance. I will forward the language to you so you can actually look at that language, and I will to you as well, Nick. So if you'd be so kind to consider those options, and I know we have one other item on the table that we want to handle, as well as the governor's recommendation.
Thank you again. So is that for the section 1 with regard to the remote? That would be the section 1 for on the child of an individual basis.
Yeah,
that new language, correct?
Page 1, yes, it's the new language.
Okay, thank you.
New language.
So it just really works to clarify the circumstances.
Yes, it's same intent, just a little bit more detailed language.
With regard to the $500 per teacher, so the parameters that you're putting in is they must be employed by the district in 2020 as well as 2021 and are currently, because when this goes into effect, we will be at the start of the next school year, July 1. So we want to make sure, so they would be continued employed for the 2020 school year. Okay, the other thing that I would like to have clarified is we know that some school districts got very limited COVID funds. Didn't have high Title I and so forth. So they had very limited COVID funds. So how do we have that assurance that Kansas Department of Education would use appropriate funds so that all school districts that choose to participate in giving that $500 stipend per teacher would receive those funds to be able to distribute?
Well, thank you for the question. We do have the chair of the task force that oversees the spending of these COVID dollars, and he is the vice chair of our House Education Committee, Representative Thomas. And so I think it would be his intent, as well as the committee, to take a look at the intent that the legislature passed. There's no requirement that schools do this, but I think that providing in compensation for the efforts and the work or work that they might be doing would be a qualifier. We were very careful in drafting language that did not use words that included bonuses. So it truly would be for the work that they did. And I agree, there are districts that received a fraction of what other districts did, and there should be no expectation for that, nor is this a recommendation for all districts. It's just a recommendation for this present school year for those that can and did receive an abundance of dollars.
Okay, give us 5 minutes and we will be back.
All right, we'll take 5 minutes. All right, we're going to go ahead and resume negotiations. Senator, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. We did have extended discussion, as you know. We really do believe that as a part of this pandemic, it's not been just the teachers that have had to adapt, but it's been the paras and the other hourly workers. So our counter offer is that teachers, paras, and other hourly workers that have worked, that did work in 2020, 2021, and are currently employed would receive additional compensation not to exceed the $500. So that would really be up to the districts if they decide they want $500 for teachers, $250 for paras, but it would truly be up to them to determine if they want to make it $100 per hourly worker, however they want to do it. But our belief is to ignore the paras and other hourly workers is to ignore all that they do contribute to that day-to-day, and we know that some of those have been in the classroom since August, and we know others that haven't been in the classroom, but have been completely virtual right up until March. So that is our counter on that. And I think that there was also a little concern with regard to, I will just leave it at that, because we'll just leave it on that counteroffer.
All right, Senator, did you have a counter offer for community and schools?
Yes, I'm sorry, Madam Chair. We will go ahead and add the $100,000 for community and schools.
Okay. Give me 1 minute. We don't even have to exit. We'll just give me a minute here. All right, we are returning. Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. We appreciate your consideration of these topics. We do agree with expansion. I think that is a great recommendation to include all employees, and that you provide that recommendation allowance, so it's up to 500, so they can scale it in any way that is appropriate for their community, their district, and their employees. So we accept that offer. We thank you for agreeing on the $100,000 for the community and schools, and would note that this is something that school districts should consider funding within their budgets going henceforth. And we would also like to agree on your offer for the $80,000 amount for the Reading Projects Managers Grant. And would just ask that you provide the language to us so we can have all the information for it, and that Norma can include that in what we provide back to our caucuses, and that would be very, very helpful. Did I forget any items that we were negotiating?
Just to clarify, Norma, do you have that language from when we worked on this in Senate Education? Okay, so I think she has that, and if you'll just, that one section. I do have a question for the reviser. Do we need to, of course, it was the request that that $80,000 be from COVID funding. Do we need to put something in there that it would be from SGF if COVID was not available?
I think that would probably be wise. Would that be agreeable? Yeah. Okay, and a question, Representative Nguyen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Clarification, Senator, that list of items to be addressed, is that planned for the year? All of those accomplished in 1 year?
Yes, that funding is for fiscal year 22.
So does the language state that clearly to the whatever agency, whatever body you reference would?
The Center for Reading is actually at Pittsburgh State University, and was written out as a 1-year grant for $80,000.
Okay, so I mean, it's clear that all those must be accomplished. Okay.
All right, so I'm prepared to list out all of the items, if we're ready to go through all of those items. Make sure that we have checked everything off of our list. So first and foremost, we need, for House Bill 2134, we want to remove the contents and insert the contents of the items that we have agreed upon in this conference committee. The items include the supplemental governor's recommendation for fiscal year '21 and for fiscal year 2022 and fiscal year 2023. It also includes contents of SB 32, which is the dual enrollment. It includes the contents of House Bill 2068, which is the eligibility for the tax credit scholarship program, except it only goes, well, it includes K through 8, and it also includes free and reduced lunch. So those are the changes. Actually, free and reduced lunch was in House Bill 2068, but the K through 8 is the portion that changes. The next item on our list is House Bill 2067/Senate Bill 93, which is the budget certification. Next item is contents of Senate Bill 173, which is the high density that includes a sunset that is 2024 with the adjustments that were approved by this committee in language. Next item would be Senate Bill 63 ACT. We approve that. That should be included, except that we are going to eliminate the unaccredited for qualification to have that ACT exam. We include the items that are approximately $10 million for Safe and Secures, the mental health pilot program in the community and schools, and the recommendation for the $500 for the teachers, paras, hourly workers, not to exceed $500. This would be directed through the Kansas Department of Education through coronavirus funds. We also include Senate Bill 51, which is the foster care report card. We also included the dyslexia reading project manager for $80,000. First, to be looking at money through the coronavirus monies, and secondarily, if not, through SGF. Have I left anything out?
Madam Chair, we believe that does include everything that has been discussed. I'm sure the reviser is going to let us know we've missed something.
Okay. Apologies, I did forget to list the remote. Yeah, the remote language and the changes that we just made on remote that were provided, so you have that. And just for clarification, for the recommendation for teacher bonus is using the COVID virus relief or corona money, that would be for this current school year, this current budget year. So it would not be next year. Is that correct? That's how we had it originally. Yes, that's how it was in Senate Bill 175. So it's not moving into the next fiscal year. It's just a recommendation for this school year, 2021, using coronavirus monies.
Madam Chair, I think that maybe we need to have open discussion about this current fiscal year, because part of the requirement is that they were employed in 2020, 2021, and that they will be working this next year. With the fiscal year starting in July 1, we are winding down the actual school year, I'm not sure the timing of school boards that those decisions could be made, and likewise, I'm not certain what funds are available to them. But we do know that new COVID funds are coming in. So I'm not certain if JG or the reviser or someone can give us some direction. I'm a little concerned about saying it's this fiscal year if it actually really won't be awarded until next fiscal year.
And I thank you, Madam Chairwoman, and I do agree, that's a great point, and I don't think that because they have until 2023, actually the beginning of 2024, to use their funds, then I would just ask if we conceptually agree that we need language that supports them being able to use that. Would that work? Norman, JG, and Nick? That it doesn't have to be. Can you help us work through that language or give us language that would make that work, considering the requests that the senator made?
Yes, we could. The thing we could do is bump that proviso language up to fiscal year 22 for the next fiscal year to look back at the 2021 school year and the teachers and paras and other employees that were teaching during that year, and recommend the bonus be given for those employees who are meet that requirement and are also working in the current school year.
Would that work, Senator?
I believe it does. Committee, are you in agreement? Yeah. I think that would give folks time to determine how they wanted to make that disbursement. Would also give the Department of Education time to be communicating with school districts. This is about communication. It's not, we know funds are coming in, but communicating how those would be distributed, I think, is going to be important, not only at the state level, but at that local level for our school boards.
Okay, thank you for catching that. Those are all the items that would be included in our House Bill 2134 Conference Committee reports. Did I miss one more time? Have I missed anything else? Okay, reminder that the 20 mills is in a different vehicle. It's in a tax bill, so I think we've covered everything to take care of education. Housekeeping items, signatures. Do you want to make a comment on that for us?
Certainly, Madam Chair. We are currently in the process of working on this report as you guys have been putting the items together. I would anticipate sometime tomorrow. I'm not going to make any prediction as of now. I'll talk to my fellow reviser, Tamara Lawrence, but it will be sometime tomorrow. We'll be contacting you and looking for signatures on the report.
Okay, well, thank you very much to all of our staff for your patience, for staying here the extra time, and to all committee members. We really do appreciate, Roger, thank you for serving this year. So with that, again, thank you to my partners on both sides. Have a great evening. We are adjourned.